And we will look at capital expenses more in our presentation in a little bit. These increases in capital expenses have caused significant changes in our city's debt and their debt payments. The city's total debt is now $463 million, which is 19% increase just since last year. For the last 2 years, their debt payments have been about $20 million a year more than their previous highs. And their new debt will continue to increase their total debt and their yearly debt payments. Finding the city's total debt was one of our hardest research challenges. One of our coalition's goals is increased transparency from the city, and this debt data is a good example of the lack of transparency we faced in our research. We asked the city on several occasions for information about their most up-to-date debt numbers and how their new debt would affect future debt payments. We never got an answer to the second question, and we received a belated answer to our first question about total debt that was a year out of date, even though we asked for that information to date. And that was significant because their debt had increased 19% from the previous year. Our coalition has had the good fortune to work with Christine Polian, who is here, who is a municipal finance expert and who has volunteered hours of her time to help us research some non-transparent aspects of the city budget. In less than 24 hours, Christine sent us the documents demonstrating the city's current debt. So how does the city pay for all of this? The city has traditionally brought money in through 3 avenues: property taxes, sales taxes, and utility fees. That's what you pay for your water, sewer, stormwater, and trash services. But in the last 2 years, debt financed revenue has become another major source of revenue for the city. So, for 2025, the city expects to bring $50 million in property taxes, $56 million in sales tax, $101 million in utility fees, and $139 million in revenue from taking on new debt. The city has other sources of revenue too, but these are the major ones. There's this last category that's bigger than taxes that's called miscellaneous. And this demonstrates a second transparency challenge our research team has faced. The city labels 28% of their revenues as miscellaneous here, and there are many places throughout their budget book where they also reference miscellaneous sources, and they don't reference what those sources are. Through our research, we discovered that 93% of this category is revenue brought in by taking out more debt. But the description in the city's budget book for this category lists 6 small sources of revenue and doesn't mention debt at all, even though it's 93% of this category. This chart from 2020, our comparison year, shows the same category, more appropriately labeled as other financing sources, as only making up 6% of the city's revenue. How has the city paid for these increases? Property tax valuation has increased 40% since 2020, but the city has not changed the property tax rate. So, effectively, the city has absorbed this increased revenue and applied it to increased expenses. Normally, property tax valuation increases at the same rate as inflation. So the increase that you get from property tax revenue is offset by the increase in costs. If you'll remember, we've had a 22% increase in inflation since 2020, but we've had a 40% increase in property valuation. So the city has received more money than offsets inflation. You can also see that utility fees have increased 8% in 2024. They've increased again 10% in 2025. And they're expected to increase again by a comparable percentage in 2026. And then finally, the sales tax revenue naturally follows more of the inflation rates and has increased about 2 to 3% per year for the last decade, except for 2021 and 2022, which were anomalous because of COVID.